Hello, everybody, and welcome to GROWL Connex. I'm Greg Olson, founder of GROWL, and today we have Kelly Johnston with Johnston Financial. Hi, Kelly. How are you?
Good. How are you doing, Greg?
I'm doing great. Hey, we really appreciate having you back on the show again. I guess if there's something in the financial world and accounting world that we can continue to learn, I think you and I could probably have a show a day and we'd never get through it. But I do appreciate you have being on the show. I think today we're going to be talking about a lot of things like year-end planning, beginning of year planning, and for many of us like business leaders, business owners, the year end comes up extremely fast.
Yeah.
And also it's been a very interesting year. And probably more important than ever is like, how do we close out the year? And should we consider in starting the year? So before we get started, I just want to give you a second to say, who you are, what's your company, and then we'll go into some what you want to talk about.
Awesome. Thank you, Greg. This year, yeah, you hit the nail on the head. This year, understanding who's your invisible board of directors and leveraging support has been more important than ever before. I know I personally have reached out to different team members. I call them team members because they're on my team, right? And just using them to help us build these businesses and continue the growth trajectory that we set despite everything that's happening in the pandemic. So I'm Kelly Johnston, as Greg had mentioned. I'm the owner and founder for JFS, also known as Johnston Financial Services. We are a full-service accounting firm that does everything from your bookkeeping and accounting needs to tax strategy, cash flow planning, and really wealth building. My intention is to be that business resource, that connector of everything finance, but also be able to help people pair up with other team members in the Valley that are very strong business leaders themselves to help them cover and mitigate risks in other areas of the business. And so that's where I feel like it's been a fun space to play this year because we've been really able to build those relationships despite not being able to be in person per se.
Totally agree. I think um, these kind of moments are important to have these ongoing meetings with your finance team. And as a small business myself, we don't have a massive finance team. And then in full transparency, you are my finance team, and this is why I've learned so much over the past few years of working side by side with you on some of these tax strategies and end of year planning and things like that. And I'll be the first to say I didn't think it would take as much time as when I started the company because I thought everything would be much more basic depending on the kind of company you are. And it has gotten more complicated with different rules and regulations and things like that. But I feel like working with you and your team, we've gotten more confident at the end of the year and more confident about what's happening kind of year over year for planning. So with that, I say thank you. And let's try to give some tips and tricks and things that people should consider. I mean, should we panic? I mean, what if a company's like, this year has been crazy. All of a sudden we're in December and I haven't done a lot of end of year planning. Let's go. What are we doing?
That's a great question. So first of all, don't panic. I think the first thing that a lot of us business owners, as an entrepreneur myself, I tend to do is make things way more complicated than they need to be. And so the biggest thing I'm emphasizing more now than ever, and I had this really big epiphany, which is funny that it's an epiphany, but at the end of November, of like, why have we made things so hard sometimes?
Sure.
And so year-end planning can be that simple. I highly encourage people to take time between now and the end of the year. And I understand it's the holidays; it's hard to set that time aside, I should say. But let's dive into it. It can be an hour here, 15-minute break there, and just go over a reflection of your year. And the reflection could be as simple as taking notes, and those can then turn into your annual meeting compliance minutes and things like that you can
Sure.
leverage for your business. But really reflecting on everything that's happened. And that includes all the stimulus financial packages that you've taken account of, all the loans and lending, grant opportunities that you have, and just kind of brain dump all of that information onto a sheet of paper. And the reason I say this is because each of those different pieces that a lot of our businesses have partaken in this year are resulting in some tax strategies or different things that could impact them come, March 15th or April 15th, respectively. and you need to be aware of that information right now. And so by getting it all on paper, you can see kind of the map of what has happened, and then take that and figure out, okay, is this going to affect my bottom line for the business from a tax reporting perspective? The PPP funding. If the IRS issued final guidance the week before Thanksgiving about how they are saying it is truly not deductible expenses, however, Congress is currently working on a bill that could possibly change that. And so being aware of like, okay, what's the worst case scenario that could happen and being prepared for it, but also knowing that part of your strategy this next year could be extending your tax return to be able to handle if Congress does make that change, right? Knowing grant funds. Grant funds are reported as income the minute cash is earned, and so that might cause your bottom line to go up, which means taxes slightly go up. And so working through those different little pieces just by writing them down and having a deeper understanding of that. I'm also challenging business owners right now, make your accountant work for you. So we right now are working with all of our clients and preparing our year-end, like last-minute plan strategy. We have a lot of year-end meetings scheduled with clients such as yourself, and we're going through and we're saying, okay, this is where you're at as of today. If we were to file your return, this is where we project the last couple weeks to be. Is there anything else that we can do in the last couple weeks to make any adjustments that you want in that strategy?
Sure.
I don't necessarily say the year-end planning should be the end-all be-all strategy for you, because we do it consistently throughout the whole year. But like the Christmas bonuses, things like profit sharing, do you need to upgrade some equipment? Things like that can be taken into account in the last couple weeks, which could totally change your tax position come April.
Sure.
In addition to that, working with a retirement advisor, like, okay, do you have an IRA, a SEP, or 401k you can contribute to and maximize, putting more money into your pocket, creating that nest egg, because we all know how those were very important this year, and at the same time reducing your tax exposure from that perspective as well. So year end to me is like the icing on the cake. This is where we make the final decisions, because come January, we're going to be setting goals to run for this next year.
That's right. And we're going to use the information we have from this year and how we are planning. I also think I take it a step further, like I'm already into next year, right? Planning. Based on the ongoing quarter by quarter analysis of my business, it helps me plan and be prepared to have let's say a nicer meeting with my accountant and finance team than it would be if I had not had those meetings, because I've been on the other side of the boat, as you know, where I waited till the end of the year, and it takes a little bit longer. And sometimes there are surprises that as a business owner, you just didn't think about, right? Like how income was reflected and, and the ramifications of taxes and things like that maybe you were prepared for. And so I really love what you're starting to say, because it really does matter. And I think it takes away the anxiety for me is sitting down. I mean, now is the time. I agree. Don't panic. Most business owners, we have a lot to panic about. So I think this is the finance thing. Get comfortable with it. I was one of those people that I just want to put my head in the dirt, sand, and not think about it until almost the last second. And then you're filing. And I know you get a lot of those people calling you at the last second, like they have to file in the next week. And you're like, well, I don't know if I can help you very much, or because it's very hard at that point. Here, we're already planning for next year for GROWL. And I think it's really beneficial. So, to say like, what I think we'll talk some of those, you might have some pointers. It helps me with hiring. It helps me with different purchases. It helps me with bonus structures and things like that, I don't essentially have to panic. I kind of know it's planned out, and I know what my revenue goals have to be to meet those. Yeah, that's fantastic. So I completely agree with you on that, is don't panic and just start now. Start grabbing that information and contact an expert. That's what I like to say. So.
And also the biggest things that I guess make me get Twitter pated as an accountant, obviously accountants, we're very historical looking, right? We're looking at past transactions that are going to result in something. But when you really think about it, my biggest premise has always been cash flow. You know me. I love to talk about cash flow and projections and that kind of stuff. And so I'm all about creating and mitigating tax exposure, because there's a lot of IRS code that allows for you to play within that and do it really well and come out with some really, really good tax positions. However, sometimes going out and buying that brand new truck at the end of the year is maybe not the best cash flow strategy if you had a different plan down the road. And so I'm always weighing the benefit of, okay, yeah, this is a really good tax position by taking this expense and accelerating this or doing whatnot. But I'm also like, I'm still a business owner and cash is king. And so I'm like, okay, but is this part of my 5-year plan? Is this part of that business entity? I have a lot of clients in my experience in the past that have it's the year end, I need to go buy a new piece of equipment. I'm like, but do you really need that? Like, is that revenue producing for you in the long run? What can you do that is going to have a long-term benefit rather than a short-term benefit?
I agree. That's a really great way to look at it, because it is kind of those knee-jerk purchases or knee-jerk reactions that can negatively affect you in the next year or the next 2 years and things like that. So and I tend to run my purchases by you before I even run them by my wife, because I'm like, is this a good idea? So and then you ask me like 10 questions, and then half the time I don't buy it. So there you go. So well, let's talk about the new year. I mean, we're gonna sit down. We've been planning or not. We're gonna sit down and start writing things down about what's happening at the end of the year. Did we meet our goals? Not our goals. Other purchases that we made. Do we need to make some? Where are we in a cash position? Those kind of things. So now planning for next year, I mean, there's a lot of things to consider, I guess. And so let's start there. I mean, everybody kind of thinks of a fresh new year. I want to lose weight. I want to save more money. I want to have better cash position. I don't know. So, what do you guide people on, or what questions do you ask, or where do you start?
Well, that's a really great question. It's a hard one because everybody's like, okay, do we think 2020 is that going to continue into 2021, right? It's a lot of people I've talked to, 2021 can't get here fast enough. I'm like, it's not going to just all go away. So what does that look like? So we've been doing a lot of budgeting and planning meetings actually over the last couple of months. We have some large corporations that we serve. And one of the things that we really have looked at is like, what is the ultimate mission of the organization in 2021? Meaning, you have your core mission and vision statement, don't get me wrong, but I'm talking about like, personal development wise, I usually choose a couple words or something that I'm going to try to step into that quality for the year to be, that's my mission for the year. And so I'm challenging a lot of our business owners, like, what is that? What does that look like for 2021? What is your goals that you want to accomplish in the company? Is it increases in pay? Is it serving more market share? What does that look like? And then you're going to back into the numbers from that perspective. And the reason I say we start there is because your mission and your intentionality with the business might have shifted quite drastically because of what happened in 2020. Not to mention, we have no idea, are we going to have some of the same shutdowns this next year? Are we going to see other stimulus packages? I don't have a crystal ball. I don't think any of us do. If you do, please share it with me. But at the same time, it's like, okay, but let's set the foundational premise. To give you an example, JFS, we set the mission back January 10th of 2020. My team members, we sat down and we chose 2 words we were going to live by this year. And the irony is not lost on me with these 2 words. We chose the health and wealth of our businesses. Those were the 2 words. And we defined health and we defined wealth, not knowing we were going to go into a health-related crisis as an economic company, county, all of that good jazz. So, but the thing is, because we had those things as our premise, we chose to do some very strategic choosing and moving as things came down the pike. Meaning, during the middle of tax season, which is our craziest time of year, PPP rolled out. We chose to ask our clients who we were doing tax returns for, hey, can we take a week longer to do your returns so we can help get PPP loan apps out? But we did that decision based off of, does that meet the core goal of health and wealth for the organization, right? And so that's one example of many I can go into. Yeah. But thinking about 2021, we've been sitting down as a team and we're like, well, what is that core mission for us? Like, and our whole premise has always been serve the client from A to Z. We want to be the person they call first. If we're not the one that can give the solution, we can at least connect them to the solution. And so knowing that, that's kind of been the premise behind all of the different decisions that we've made. And then we also had some revenue goals. Don't get me wrong, I'm all about very SMART goal format, right, for the year, being very specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and have a timeline for it. We set those SMART goals, but we also made sure that the goals that we set were in alignment with that core mission or those words that we set for the year. Because you can't, if you have a mission, from a core perspective of X and your financials are Y and they're not in alignment, you're not going to hit one of them. And then you're going to feel like you haven't accomplished something. So coming into alignment. And I know this isn't very financy in the conversation, but it truly is, because we all have programs when it comes to the word money and cash. Like whether we want to say that they show up or not is totally different. And so if you know core-wise where you're going, we can align the cash flow with that core, and it becomes a heck of a lot easier to hit the cash flow goals.
I like that. I think I love the words. I think that's an important thing to add. I'm always very goal focused. I believe in writing my goals down, always have. And then, where do we land? Ours is we want to like to work with companies that it's important that they retain or generate new jobs, right? And I think we ask that question with companies we're going to start to work with. What's your process? How do you track this? It's almost like I wish I could on my website have a job generated index or something to show like all the clients we work with over time that they've been growing, and that tells me, what's happening and they're really, how they're working with the economy. I love the SMART goals. We could probably even have something on that. People are like, I go by specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, time bound. I add smarter to that, and I talk about what's enjoyable and what's rewarding. I think as business owners, we forget that, I can talk about our revenue goals, but it killed me to get to that point, right? I mean, it just crushed. And I think the health part of it goes away sometimes, So I try to think of, those other things, how is it rewarding to me? It can be rewarding to the company, but was it rewarding to me as a business owner too? So thank you for bringing that into play. And I think I'd like to see more people writing their goals down as they plan. So when you work with us, work with a company, you're kind of I know you're kind of helping guide them through that a little bit. Like, what are your goals? What are you trying to work at? And I guess, a lot of people lead with, of course, that our revenue goal, right? But I have worked with you and you're like, no, what's important to you? What are you trying to do? And I think that goes into probably wealth building also, but also, we want to pay our house off, or we want to buy another piece of property, or I want to do X. And I think what I do enjoy is having that conversation. It's not just about your year-over-year accounting or taxes, but how it all flows into a bigger piece of the pie, which I'd never really thought of it in all that, very much of a layer cake of how we work with it. Because I think after we started thinking like that, we started seeing some of these other goals come into place and how it was pushing our company. And all of a sudden internally, I was like internalizing like the decisions I was making were affecting these other things, I guess.
Right. Well, and that's like, I always preach when I teach classes through like the business incubator for a lot of our startups. I want people to think, and this is how I approach everything, is that end goal in mind. Like if I'm setting something up now, like what's the end goal of this? Am I going to sell this company? Am I going to gift it to my kids? Is there, what is that end goal? And if you keep that kind of in the back of your mind, then all the decisions you make become part of that alignment. It's kind of like when all of those stimulus packages came out this year and everybody was like, Kelly, do I do the PPP? Do I do EIDL? Do I do this? Okay, but let's check in for a second. Where are you at now? What's your 5-year goal? Is this going to create problems or help you in that 5-year goal? Is having debt on your balance sheet a good thing or a bad thing for you? A lot of it just depends on the situation and the particular long-term planning for that reason. And then like I said, what I like to think about is from all of that SMART goal philosophy, you can then pare down key performance indicators, KPIs, that help you measure those fence posts along the way. And that's what a budget is to me. A budget is a flat out SMART goal. It's a little bit of a big one, comparatively speaking, but it's a SMART goal, right? And to me, a budget is I get to look at it from a permission to spend in certain buckets rather than a restriction, meaning I know that I've set aside X dollars based off of my revenue to be able to do this. And yeah, you can have a little bit of a flexible budget approach, meaning as things change, you can flex and move within that. And at the same time, that's the whole point of doing this, is to kind of give you that guideline. What I've learned is clients and companies who have chosen into just kind of running it, flying by the seat of their pants, don't get me wrong, will do great. And at the same time, it becomes really hard for them because after a certain point, they kind of get lost as to like what their core goal is anyway, or the purpose. That whole thing kind of fades away at that point.
It completely does, because you forget what you're working for, or you forget your personal goals, and you forget the mission, vision of your own company because of other people are making decisions. I just want to say, I think more than ever now, I think we have A, B, C type scenarios that we're running right now for next year. I sit on a couple boards. I know you do as well. And I think it's like when we look at like nonprofits or foundations, now we're looking at that more than ever. Like what happens if X happens, or how do we do this, or how do we raise funds? No different with my own business. I look at different scenarios, and who knew we'd have to start planning for a potential if it shut down, or if we can't be in the office, or if our client mix is correct, or if they have to shut down, and what products and services, and I more than ever like to look at all of those things, because then I'm more comfortable. It takes the fear out of it, right? So when some scenario happens, I know like really how to plan for it. So almost I feel like I'm my own little astronaut, my little spacecraft, sometimes flying alone. But if something happens, I can open my book up and be like, oh, well, let's implement this. So, I want to take just a few more minutes. And I thank you for taking so much time. Can you mention something just key on profit first for me?
Oh yeah, definitely.
I throw it out. The book is behind you. I'm a huge advocate of it. I've been learning so much about it working with you. So I thought maybe people are going to be like, what's that? I've told people about it. But again, I think it really has changed how I run my finances in my business and my personal life, which you told me it would, but I was like, sure it will. And then here we are today. Go ahead.
I do remember that conversation,
yes.
Greg.
Yeah.
Alrighty, so yeah, Profit First. Okay, if you all don't know, Profit First is a book that was written by Mike Michalowicz. I am a certified Profit First professional. That tells you how much I really do love the process that he really has created. But really, if you think about it, Profit First is just a cash flow methodology that works within normal human behavior. We all remember when grandma used to do, I don't know if your grandma did this, my grandma totally did, so this is how I grew up. She'd have the multiple envelopes, and she'd put her money in the different envelopes and take one envelope to church, and that was her tithing, and then she'd take an envelope to the grocery store. That was how she managed cash flow. And she was uber conservative. She'd save like tin foil, all sorts of stuff. What Profit First is it's that same like envelope system, but using bank accounts and working within our normal spend habits, specifically where we've gone more electronic with a lot of our cash flow. Meaning, if you put the money aside ahead of time for taxes and paying yourself first, and profit, which is also like your emergency fund, things like that, pulling that money out before you even pull out your operating expenses. So it's a methodology of operating off of a smaller plate, meaning if you eat off a smaller plate and you eat less calories, you're probably going to lose weight. It's the same kind of thought process within the business. It's one of my favorite, like I said, methodologies. And the cool part is Mike Michalowicz does a ton of free resources on it. And then also he's got lots of Profit First professionals that can help you implement at a deeper level. The book is an easy read, gives you some great tips to get right out of the gate. He has an amazing Elevated Now podcast for small business owners that has he brings guests on that talk about how to do it in restaurants, how to do it in, like, every industry is broached in that subject matter. But for me, we've been doing it in JFS for 4 years, and I'm going to tell you, it really shifted my mindset around cash, which is funny to say considering I'm an accountant, but it also really allowed for us to have the reserves available to us during the contraction that we just went through from the pandemic perspective. I felt a lot more confident navigating those waters than I ever had before. And so I had clients who we had implemented Profit First with about 2 or 3 years prior, in the last 2 years, call me and say, Kelly, your Profit First profit account is saving my business. And that was the coolest thing to ever hear. So it doesn't have to be complicated. It's really simple, but it works within our normal behaviors.
It really does. And I think it's those different buckets and planning, again, taking the anxiety out of planning for end of the year and the beginning of the year and during the year, and how that cash flow kind of flows through your company, has really helped me plan for, how do we kind of have like some type of profit sharing, bonuses, raises, and be confident in those decisions. And I think as a business owner, I think we're not always confident because we're not finance experts. We didn't go to school for finance. Not, we didn't go to school for accounting. Maybe we took accounting classes, but I guarantee it might have not been the class that we paid attention in the most. Or, and I tell everybody now, like I would go back and take a accounting and finance class now but again, I think you can get over it by hiring experts that stay up on top of tax code and state business code, and there's all these kind of things, enterprise zones, and we didn't even talk about that, and how does that affect you and what should you do as a business? And so there's all these, and we'll talk about that on another show, but I think, this is all, and I get excited, obviously, why I like talking to you about it, because it wasn't long ago that I wasn't excited to talk to you or talk about taxes or planning or finances, and it was sometimes things are heavy lifting in it, but I think we get through it with planning. And I think I'm a good testament of that, is like, if you work your plan, then you get on the other side of it. And it can take, 12 months, 18 months, 36 months. But again, it's such a short period of time to be in a very positive position.
Yep, very much so.
Or we talked about a lot of things. I really appreciate it. I took some notes too of things that I'm going to work on for my end of the year and my meeting with you, so I can be a little bit more prepared. And also for beginning of the year, I want to close out with, because what's really exciting, and we will have more information on this, is this whole extreme movement business you've started and extreme cash flow. And we will have a whole series on that, because this is amazing that I don't know where you find the time, but again, you care so much about helping other businesses and other people that you came up with these own tools and business. So do you have a couple minutes just to share that with us?
Yeah, so my biggest thing has always been the education aspect about finance and accounting for small business, because I just felt like there's always a gap in communication there.
Yeah.
So Extreme Movement is one of our companies. You can go to extrememovementllc.com, no E, so it starts with an X. That there is, Extreme Movement is our educational platform. You can take on-demand classes that are they're preset. They're run like 6 to 12 weeks, depending on the course, on how to plan your cash flow, profit first methodology. That one's actually going to be launching soon. There's one on understanding accounting and understanding how to read your financial statements. These are courses that I've done live through the business incubator and things like that. And so you can sign up for those classes there. We also do a ton of content on this page. So we've got tips for success, board of directors. We've got some starter budget information. We're doing a whole debt corner. Yep, so there's the Debt Education Center about what types of debt are good debt to invest in, things like that. And this is purely from a self-education perspective. There's a podcast that we are going through and working on. We bring on guest speakers for it, like bankers, insurance advisors, things like that. And that one right now, we're working on some growth and changes in trajectory for 2020 runaround. But again, it's educationally driven and it's free content. So plug into that if you're a business owner. There's just some really good stuff there for you. And then Extreme Cash Flow is actually a software application I developed with the help of a really amazing developer here in local Grand Junction area. And it is a cash flow projection tool that plugs into QuickBooks, QuickBooks Online, and Xero, or can just be standalone, and it helps you plan out your budget and cash flow projections. And from there, you can import prior year information and then create new assumptions, say, what happens if I hire an employee? What happens if I cancel this contract? And it gives you some scenarios about what will happen with your cash in your bank. The cool part about that platform is it does pair well with Profit First, meaning you can run multiple bank accounts through it. So we do that a lot with our current clients, utilizing the platform. It's definitely something other accountants, hint, hint, can plug into and use to help their clients as well. So
Yeah.
Again, my intention is to truly give you, as business owners, lots of resources that are available, because you might not have time necessarily to meet with your accountant, but if you can get some of the content, why not leverage it and use it?
Yeah, I'm excited. It's a great product. Any kind of information that's easily at our fingertips that my business partner and I use it to plan. We can run different scenarios with you. That way we can understand. So there's that head and heart thing that we have as business owners, and we're trying to make how we make decisions. And, it's great to have the data to tell us, right? Especially if you have partners in a business, or, you're trying to make decisions, you can really make it on data, right? And play with the different scenarios. So thank you for sharing that. We'll put that information out to our listeners as well. Well, with that, Kelly, thank you so much for, again, talking about end of the year planning, beginning of the year planning. Big thing I took away: don't panic, work your plan. There's new information come out of the time. I hope you have a wonderful holiday, you and your team. And
thank you
again for being on the show.
Thank you. It was so great joining you today.